All right, in this video we are looking at factoring. Factoring you'll find is one of the most useful tools in math. So factoring, to do it, what we do is the opposite of multiplying that we looked in the last section with polynomials. So in other words, we're looking for two things, two or more things, factors, that when you multiply them all out, you get the original expression or original number. So for example, if I pick 15, so 15 is my expression, and I want to get two or more things that multiply to 15. I could go 1 times 15. That'd be 1, but usually 1 is like cheating. So other numbers, and you're probably already thinking 3 times 5. Sure enough, so 3 is a factor, 5 is a factor. When you multiply them, you get 15. That's the idea that we're going for, but we're going to use x's. We're going to look at 3 or 4 different ways of factoring an expression based on what it looks like to begin with. And that's something that you need to get good at, is recognizing when to do each one of these types of factoring. And you want to practice that as you go through the homework. The first type of factoring we'll look at is something called common factor. And what we do there is we look at the terms of an expression. So here's a term, and here's another term. Terms are always separated by an addition or subtraction sign. And I look to see what is a common thing that I could take out. And we always use the word take out, but really what we're wanting to do is divide. So I want to divide each of those terms by a common thing. You might see that 5 will go into all of them. That's good. Anything else? Sure, an x is also something that you could take out. So what I'm going to do, I'll put an extra step in, but I usually don't put this step in. So I'm going to factor out a 5x. And so what I'm going to do is to each of those terms that are in the expression, what I'm doing is I'm dividing each of them by whatever I'm taking out. So 5x, 5x, 5x. So usually I skip this step and go right to the next one because I try and do that in my head. Okay, I'm factoring a 5x out. And now when I do this division, the 5's cancel. One of the x's cancel, so that would be left with x squared. In the next one, 5 goes into 15 3 times. One of the x's goes away, so that term becomes minus 3x. And then the last one, 5 divided 5 is 1. X's, they cancel, so that last term is 1. Okay, so usually I go from this step to this step, but this hopefully gives you a clear idea of what we're doing. So that's common factoring. Go ahead, try one. Or 2. So here's 2 you can try. They're just common factoring. Try them, pause, try them, and then come back to see if you got them right. Okay, the first one, you can factor out a common 5. So it's like this divided 5, and like this divided by 5. Again, if you're okay with that step, just doing that in your head, just skip it. The next one, here's a term, and here's a term. So there's sort of a bigger thing, and they're terms because there's a multiplication right there. So I take a look at this term, and they both have a y plus 4. So I can factor out a y plus 4. And again, what I'm doing is I'm dividing this by y plus 4 and this by y plus 4. So the y plus 4's would cancel, and all I'd be left with is x minus z. I like that one. The next type of factoring is known as group factoring. We use this when we try and factor using the FOIL method or the AC method, as it's called. And what you do, you can know that you're going to group factor if you have 4 terms. So here's 4 terms. And what I do is I group the first 2 and I group the second 2. Notice I include that positive or negative sign there with the second one. And then I just do group factoring. So out of the first 2, I could factor out y squared, leaving me with y minus 1. Out of the next one, I can factor out a positive 5. It's important to put that sign there. Left with a y minus 1. Okay, so we did group factoring with each one of those. Then you take a look at this term and this term to see if there's anything common. Just like on the last slide, yes, there's a y minus 1 that's common. So I can factor out a y minus 1, and then I'll be left with y squared plus 5. Okay, so that's how you group factor. Try. Okay, hopefully you've tried it. Press pause and now press play. I just made this one up, so I hope it works. Out of these first two, I can factor out an a squared, leaving me with a minus 4. Out of the next two, I think I can factor out a negative 3. Now that negative is one you have to be careful with. So if I factor out a negative 3, it's like I'm taking minus 3a and a positive 12, and I'm dividing them both by a minus 3. So careful with that. Okay, 3a, these would cancel, so it would just leave me with an a. On the next one, 12 divided negative 3 is a negative 4. Okay, now here's a term and here's a term. They each share an a minus 4, so I can put that out front, and then I'm left with a squared minus 3. Okay, group factoring. Next, just sort of the basic one that when you say factoring, you sort of think you're doing. And this is one where you're looking for two numbers, so two numbers, and they have to multiply to a negative 24, and the same numbers have to add to a negative 5. You can do this if you just have an x squared there and not a number out front. Okay, so I'm looking for two numbers. So they multiply to 24, so like negative 24 times 1. 8 times 3, so negative 8 and a positive 3, or positive 8 and negative 3. 6 and 4 will work too, so 6, negative 6 and positive 4, or positive 6 and negative 4. I'm just going through most of the options there. Okay, I think that's most of them. Oh, positive 24, negative 1. So those are all the numbers, and they all multiply to negative 24. But which one adds to a negative 5? Looks like it's that one right there. And you don't have to write all these ones down if you find the one right off the bat. So if that's my answer, then I take this and I rewrite it as two brackets. Two brackets, an x in the first, x in the second, and then I take those two numbers and plug them in. So a negative 8 and a positive 3. Done. If you want, you can multiply it out like we did in the last section, just to confirm that it's correct. But I think it's correct. Try that one. Okay, hopefully you paused and went again. I'm just going to do this one in my head. The y's go here. Things that multiply to 15 add to 8. 3 and 5. 3 and 5 is 8. Yeah, so 3 and 5. Now, because this is positive, both signs have to be the same. Because this is negative, they both have to be negative. Again, you could FOIL that out to see if it's correct. Next type of factoring is one where you have a number out front of the x squared. And those are the ones that are typically a little bit tougher for people. I like to do these just by guessing and checking. This is how guessing and checking works. So I just put my two brackets, and I look at this number, and I say, well, the only way I could get that would be if I have a 3x here and an x there. Then I take a look at the 8 and say, well, that could be a minus 4 and a 2. It could be an 8 and a 1, but probably not. And I guess negative 8, positive 1, or 8 and a negative 1, or positive 4 and a negative 2. Okay, I'm thinking I'm putting a 4 here, a positive 4, and a negative 2 there. Again, I'm just guessing, and now I have to multiply through to make sure it's correct. This would be a positive 12x. This would be a negative 2x. This would be a negative 8. When I add these together, I get positive 10, so that means that this answer is correct. Now, that's how you can do it with just the guess and check method. And I quite like that. I'm faster with that. But you can also factor that using something called the AC method. And there's other methods too, but the AC is the other common one. And what that happens is you have to multiply the 3 and the negative 8 together. That'll give you negative 24. And then you do the same thing as we did in the last thing. Figure out two numbers that multiply to 24 and add to 10. So like minus 12 and 2, that's 24. Oh, that's negative 10. So positive 12 and a negative 2 multiplies to negative 24, adds to a 10. Good. Now, I don't just take those numbers and put them in a bracket. What I do is I take the expression that I have here, and I split the 10 into those two numbers. So it'll be a positive 12x and a minus 2x. Notice that those two there, 12 take away 2, does give me that 10 up there. So I haven't changed the equality of anything. All right, now I have a negative 8 there. Good. Now I group factor. So I look at these two and I look at those two. I see a negative there, thinking, oh, got to be careful. Out of the first two, I think I can take a 3x out, leaving me with x plus 4. With the next one, negative 2. So negative 2 out, and that'll leave me with an x plus 4. Again, think in your mind, divide this by negative 2, divide this by negative 2. Negative divided by negative, that's where that positive comes from. 8 divided 2 is 4. Okay, now I have two terms again. Each of them share an x plus 4. So I can factor out an x plus 4. Those two go. And then I'll be left with 3x minus 2. And if you take a look at your answer there and the answer right there, they're both the same. Okay, why don't you try a couple. Pause, try them, come back, see how you do. Okay, I'm just going to guess and check this one. I'm thinking 2m and an m. 8 and 7. 8 and 7. Maybe 7 here and an 8 there. And maybe this is positive and this is negative. I don't know. Let's FOIL it. 2m squared plus 14m minus 8m minus 56. I get those two right, but those come down to a 6. Yeah, so that's not right. Okay, I guess I didn't need to erase all of that. Maybe I should have just left it there so I could see what I was doing. Okay, 2m and an m. Now 8 and 7, they didn't work so well. If I have an 8 there, how about an 8 here and a 7 there? And maybe this is plus and this is minus. 2m squared plus 16m minus 7m, there we go, minus 56. When I subtract those, I get 9, which I'm supposed to get. Therefore, there's my answer. You could have done that by AC method too, but it would have hurt a little bit more. Okay, let's try this next one. Let's do this one with the AC method. 20 times 6 is 120. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 120, and they have to have a difference or add to negative 23. So multiply to 120. Okay. Multiply to 120. 10 times 12, or 5 times 24. 8 times something. 8 times 15. Ooh, right there. Those things, if they're both negative, come out to 23. Those are my numbers. So 20x squared minus 8x minus 15x plus 6. Group factor. I think I can take a 4x out, leaving me with 5x minus 2, I think. Ooh, a negative. I can take a 3 out, minus 3. So that'll be a 5x minus 2. Hey, samesies. Nice. So 5x minus 2 is common. I'll take that out, and I'm left with 4x minus 3. Okay, hopefully that factoring stuff is coming back to you. Last couple of sections here are just looking at using formulas and recognizing. This one is called the difference of squares. So difference means subtract, and these two numbers have to be squares. So all the pretty square numbers would be ones like 1 or 4 or 9, 16, 5 squared is 25, 6 squared, 7 squared, 8 squared, 9 squared, 10 squared, 11 squared, 12 squared, 13 squared, 14 squared, 15 squared, 16 squared. Yeah, I'm done. Anyway, those are all the square numbers. So if you have those in there, if you see those in a question, perhaps it might be a sum or a difference of squares, or maybe a sum or difference, or not of cubes. These are just squares. So if you see these numbers, it could be a difference of squares. All right, so when you see that, what you do is you just use that formula right there. So what they did here is they have an a squared, they just split it into there and there. They had a b squared, they split it into the last spots. So I'm going to do the same. X, I'm splitting into both those. 49 is 7 squared. So I put a 7 there and a 7 there. One's minus, one's plus. Try. Okay, hopefully you've unpaused. Splitting this would give me a 2p squared here and a 2p squared there. Splitting this would give me a 3q to the fourth and a 3q to the fourth. One's minus, one's plus. Done. Last section is on sum and difference of cubes. These are ones where you really have to use the pattern. So I'll show you an example of doing that pattern with both the sum and difference of cubes. Feel free, if you sort of know what you're doing, to go ahead and try it. Okay, x cubed plus 27. This one is a difference of cubes. I don't want that one. I want a sum of cubes. There we go. That's the pattern I need to follow. So I need to figure out what each thing is cubed. So x is easy because it's just x cubed. But 27, I have to figure out what that is cubed. I know 1 cubed is 1, 2 cubed is 8, 3 cubed is 27, 4 cubed, 64, 5 cubed, 125, 6 cubed, 216, 7, yeah, I don't know that one. Anyway, you could go 7 times 7 times 7 to figure out what that is. Anyway, 27 is right here. That's 3 cubed, so I can put a 3 here and a cube there. Okay, so now I just follow this pattern that they have established right there. Okay, so equals... Now, A is the thing that's inside the bracket there, and B is the thing that's inside the bracket over there. So my A is x, plus my b is a 3. And then on this one, I've got my a is an x, so x squared, minus a times b, so x times 3 would be a 3x, plus, and then b squared, b is 3, so 3 squared would be 9. Done. Let's try one more. Ooh, this one's a minus one. Oh, we got the right one right above it. Good. So, but I have to figure out what a and b are. So I have to figure out what cubed gives me 8t cubed minus 27. We did that one already. That's 3 cubed. So 8. 8 was one of those numbers, though. It's 2 cubed, I think. So I can put a 2 and a t here. If I do 2t cubed, it gives me 8t cubed. If I do 3 cubed, it gives me 27. But what I'm focused in on there is that this part right there is my A, and this part right there is my B. Okay, so let's follow the pattern. Equals, okay, so A is 2t, minus B is a 3. Good. Okay, now A squared. A is 2t, so I have to go 2t squared, because that's my A, plus A times B. So 2t times 3 would be 6t, plus B squared. B is a 3, so 3 squared is 9. Done. Oh, maybe not done. This here I could probably simplify. So 2t minus 3, 2t squared. 2 squared would be 4, t squared would be t squared, plus 6t plus 9. That's probably where I would end that question. All right, hopefully that gives you some help on some factoring, bit of review. Try the homework and then try the quiz. And remember the video quiz after.